All right. Merry Christmas, everybody. It's a time for another episode of Hot Cocoa and a Christmas story. Any of you all that hang out with me know that I love to tell Christmas stories. There's nothing better than a good time around a fireplace and telling some good old fashioned Christmas stories. And we're going to be doing that again. I've been doing this for like 20 years, telling Christmas stories and loving to share Christmas narratives. And some are serious and some are fun, but they're all trying to teach us a point about the true meaning, the real meaning of Christmas. And so that being said, I know there's a little bit of irony. We're going to do today's sermon. You've seen my super awesome swiggity swaggity coat that I've worn before. I'm wearing my Dodging Through the Snow. Now, technically this is my hat, but the moment it got delivered to me, my wife claimed it for her own. And it's even got like music in it that I can play jingle bells in it or something. So, just really excited about it. And so once again, I get the irony of going, but we're going to share one of my most unusual Christmas stories that we ever did, a story called Christmas Photo. And it's unusual in a lot of different ways. One, it has visuals. All right. So if you're just listening to this somewhere, you're going to miss out on some of the pictures, but there's going to be visuals that go along with it. And so we're going to enjoy some of those visuals. And it is let's say a completely made up story. Many of my narratives are designed to be historical narratives where we take a historical story and we tell it in a way that we're communicating it in a narrative way. But they are nonfiction stories. This, believe it or not, is a complete fabrication. All right. This is a fiction story, but it's a great story nonetheless. And so I'm excited to share the Christmas photo with you. All right. I'm excited to share the Christmas photo with you. Bill looked at the new bike. It was shiny, red, and came with a matching helmet. Where am I going to get $100? Bill worked hard at stuffing things, selling paint and hammers and pillows and dog food, and every day he would walk past the bike and dream about riding it down the street with a pack of dogs following him. But he always had to say, where am I going to get $100? He thought about working out really hard for a couple of weeks so he could become a professional football player, but it made him tired. And then he thought about reading some really big books so he could become a lawyer, but just thinking about it made his head hurt. He finally thought he might be able to find some rich person's lost dog and get the reward, but the only dog he had seen wasn't really that rich. If only I could find a way to get $100, Bill said to himself. But who would give Bill $100? It wasn't like people just gave away $100 money prizes. Look, $100 money prizes, a lady with a child hollered out to a passing businessman. Turning his head, Bill saw a poster in the greeting card section. The best Christmas picture would win a big prize, big enough for him to buy that bike. But what kind of Christmas photo would be good enough to win $100? The downtown Christmas tree was beautiful this time of year, but everyone was taking pictures of it. There was the old sled hill he used to play on, but someone recently built condominiums on that hill. What would make a good picture? The church always had a live nativity set up. Maybe he could take a picture of it. Wait, said Bill. I've got a better idea. Bill returned to his room to gather up his camera. He lived in the basement of his parents' house, where he liked to watch the Star Boys quintilogy and chat with his friends online. In his spare time, he would tinker with his inventions, including a working time machine that he was building out of returns to stuffing things. In 10 years, he would get it finished. Then we'll travel back in time and give it to himself as a birthday present a couple of months ago. On the corner of his desk, Bill picked up his Bible. I'm going to need this as a reference. When I finish taking a picture of the real first Christmas, I'm sure to win the $100 prize. The machine whirred, and it buzzed. Shocks of electricity jumped wildly over his head. Then everything changed. As Bill looked through the foggy glass of his time machine, he could make out the rows and rows of wavy wheat. Bill remembered reading that this area of Israel was so well known for its bread that people began to call it, the town that is, the house of bread. The gentle hills were dotted with occasional sheep pen or small house. Then he saw in the valley next to a small stream underneath a star-filled sky, Bethlehem. It was larger than he had expected it to be. There must have been hundreds of buildings, some small and others quite large, and everything was covered in sand. It was late at night when Bill arrived. Still, the town was crowded and noisy. Animals were tied up in the streets, families huddled in corners, and everywhere you looked there were signs of people on the move. Vendors were selling birds, sheep, fruit, clothes, spices, and more. A young guard in dull armor stood at the end of one long street. "Is it always this crowded?" Bill asked the soldier. "It's usually worse," said the soldier. "Most everyone has gone to sleep. If you're looking for a place to stay, you're too late. There's a camp up on the hill, I hear. One of the innkeepers has moved out some furniture so people can sleep on the floor." Bill wasn't looking for a place to stay for the night, but he was looking for an inn. Near the edge of town, Bill did find one with tables and shelves that had been moved into the street. Worn-out travelers sat around the tables as the salty innkeeper bellowed to all walking past, "There's no more room in the inn, but I can find you a place for the night. I had a young man who agreed to clean out my stable for him and his pregnant wife to stay in." Bill smiled and went around the back of the inn to find a lot covered with camels, donkeys, and horses. A servant watched the animals as a young man arranged the stable to make it more accommodating for the night. "Let me help," said Bill, and together he and Joseph mucked the stalls, threw hay on the floor to cover the mud, and pushed out the frequent sheep that wandered in to munch on the slop in the old feeding trough. The stable was old and dirty. It smelled of wet sheep and horse and hay. Two other females had crowded into other stalls for the night when the time came. Joseph jumped to his feet and began to pace. "What do I do?" A mother of 5 camped in the stall next to Mary and Joseph woke and came to Mary's aid. There were tears and screams and hugs of encouragement, and that night there was a baby. He was wrinkled and tiny, really, really loud, and Joseph pulled out the swaddling clothes they had bought all the way from Nazareth and wrapped the child, and Mary said, "His name is Jesus." And though her hair was messy and her face dirty, she held her son tightly until she could no longer stay awake. And Joseph took Jesus and laid him in the manger, and he and Bill had just cleaned it out. Then with a click, Bill took a picture. Mary, however, did not get to sleep very long. At the opening of the stable, a group of ragged shepherds arrived. Their faces were covered with bristly whiskers, and their clothes were worn, dirty, and torn and patched. And though they were out of breath, they could not stop speaking to one another and to any of those that they saw in the street about the terrifying and wonderful thing that had just happened to them on the hill. One spoke clearly. "There was an angel, and the angel said, 'Don't be afraid. I'm here to announce a great and joyful event that is meant for everybody worldwide. A Savior has just been born in David's town, a Savior who is Messiah and Master. This is what you're to look for, a baby wrapped in a blanket and lying in a manger.' Is that the baby? May we see him?" When they saw him, the shepherds began shouting and dancing and running into the streets to tell everyone their story. Mary did not scold them for making a fuss. She just sat and watched and smiled, and Bill took another picture. With all the hustle and to-do that the shepherds were making, the arrival of a new group of men went unnoticed, but it did not take long for word to get into the stable. "Strange men from distant lands have come to see the baby," cried out one of the shepherds. Bill rushed to see these men. It was the wise men. They were dressed in strange clothes, but carried in their hands small but precious gifts. They presented these gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh to Mary as they told their stories. "We asked around, where can we find and pay homage to the newborn King of the Jews? We observed a star in the eastern sky that signaled his birth. We're on pilgrimage to worship him. After much traveling, we have come here to Bethlehem, following the star that you can see clearly is vivid and shines directly above you." Bill said, "This is it. Everyone come into the stable." It was crowded. There were 3 or 4 families, the shepherds, the wise men, and their servants, and many of the animals had wandered back in, and Joseph was working hard to keep oil in the lamps. Young boys pushed through the legs to have a chance to touch the child. The old woman said, "I've had 5 children of my own, so I knew just what to do." Bill tried to get everyone to stand still. "Could you look here for a minute? But don't stand in front of me. Try to smile a little. Now, I can't see the baby." He took one picture after another. Maybe one of these would be good enough for him to win the $100 cash prize. Bill finally stepped outside to look through the pictures. They were all dull and dirty and just not very Christmassy. How could he possibly win the cash prize when none of his pictures looked at all like the holidays? The solution was simple. "I've got a time machine," said Bill. "I'll just go back home and get a few things to help make this picture really first rate. Nothing too much, of course. I want the picture to be as authentic as possible." So Bill returned to his home to gather a few things. He knew he would need some lights. The pictures were all too dull, and a new clean blanket would only be right to wrap the baby Jesus in. Nothing big, but if he went back earlier, he could paint up the stable just a little so that it wouldn't be so drab. So Bill filled up the time machine and added a few extras just in case and returned to Bethlehem. "This may take longer than I thought. I better go back home and get something to eat." And so he did. And while he was there, he grabbed a few more boxes. And more boxes. And more boxes. Bill wanted everything to be perfect. He landed his time machine on the hillside just outside of town several hours before Jesus was to be born. Around him were the shepherds. "Do not be afraid," said Bill. "I bring you good news, and a great joy baby is going to be born in Bethlehem." The shepherds looked stunned and afraid. "He will be the Christ, but you are all too dirty to see him. So here's the good news. I have shampoo and moisturizing body wash, plus an electric razor." Bill led the shepherds down the hill so that he might clean them up and dress them in clean clothes. As they walked away, angels appeared on the hillside and sang to a field filled only with sheep. As Bill finished with the shepherds, he immediately rushed away. Something has to be done about the wise men. The large caravans of camels and servants preceded the scholars on their road to Bethlehem. "Wise men from the east," called out Bill, "you bring gifts to the newborn King of the Jews. But your gifts are so small, so I have brought you large boxes, foam packing peanuts, and wrapping paper." The wise men had never seen such strange and exotic items. "Surely, stranger, you bring something new to the face of us. Though learned and wise as we are, show us these packing peanuts that you speak of." And with a song in his heart, Bill began showing the wise men the wonders of cellophane tape, singing Christmas cards and warm winter scarves. "Mary, did you know that your baby boy should always sleep on 800 thread count sheets?" said Bill. "And I know you just had a baby, but seriously, it looks like you are wrestling a crocodile in the swamp. Come with me." And Bill led Mary out behind the inn, where he set up a small dressing station complete with makeup, hair products, vanity, accessories, perfumes, fashion magazines, and a lighted camel dressed like a reindeer. "This is nothing like what the angel Gabriel described to me," Mary stated. "No? Well, trust me, this is what people want to see. One little picture, and we'll remind everyone what Christmas is really supposed to be about. Now, here, Put on these sunglasses. Click. Bill took his pictures. Of course, he made a few changes to the stable. I'm only going to add things that make the photo more like Christmas without ruining the authenticity. Things like an evergreen. What is Christmas without a tree? Bill then added some lights on the tree for the kids and a large star. That's biblical, he stated. Next, he pushed out most of the shepherds. You just don't look the part. A brawny sheep herder and a tall, handsome assistant were allowed to remain. You are all beautiful, and just think, we're helping Christmas be more wondermous for years to come. And with that, Bill wheeled in a dozen boxes filled with festive lights, inflatable lawn art, and a small gas-powered generator. Bill returned home with a smile on his face and a picture in his application packet. He was certain that his Christmas photo would be a winner. How could it not? It's a real-life picture of the very first Christmas! Bill's thoughts went back to the shiny red bike at Stuffin' Things. Bill was going to get all he wanted this Christmas. It was certainly going to be a season to celebrate, a season of lights, a season of songs and candy. Bill straightened his Santa hat and headed to the store. The judging of the photo contest would start soon, and he didn't want to be late. As Bill walked down the street, he noticed things didn't seem quite right. A passerby, with her face nearly completely covered with a scarf, waved, "Have a clean Christmas! Would you like a squirt of hand sanitizer?" Bill stuck out his hands. "Where's your scarf?" another person yelled. "How can you celebrate Christmas without a scarf?" Bill just shrugged his shoulders. "Don't mess with him," said a child. "He's just a grump. He hasn't even done his hair up. What's wrong, mister? You don't love the great joy baby, Jesus, enough to fix up your hair? Just stay home, you Grinch." What was going on? Everybody was acting so weird, and the closer he got to Stuffin' Things, the worse it got. There were boxes the size of cars lining the outside of the stores with the large signs, "Be a wise man and get humongous boxes for all of your biggest loves." Inside was no better. The store was covered with little foam peanuts, and they were piled in the corner and on top of racks and even falling from the ceiling. "Hey, young man, where's your Christmas spirit?" The store manager stood at the sunglasses booth. "Let me tell you a story that happened 2,000 years ago. In a little town of Bethlehem, shepherds on a hill were told of a great joy baby that would be born, and on that night they were given new clothes and fancy hairdos and scarves so that they might worship the child. And today, wise men still seek hair products that will honor him." Bill pulled off his hat and hung his head. He ran out of the store. Things have to be made right. I've ruined Christmas. Bill jumped back in his time machine, and in a flash he was back in Bethlehem. Could he save Christmas? He wasn't sure, but he did not like what it had become. It had gone from being a time of love, peace, and joy to a time of self-centered, image-driven egocentrism. Then it began to happen. The moment Bill had been waiting for. The sky filled with a million colors as bright lights filled the evening sky. And bam! There in front of Bill was a time machine. And it was clean and shiny, and out of its door stepped Bill, who was very surprised to see himself waiting for him. "I want to show you the photo that you're about to take," said Bill. "Looks great," said the other Bill. "Not really. It's out of focus. Because of this photo, the whole world will think that Christmas should focus on themselves, their looks, and their wants. You cannot take this picture." The two Bills talked, and eventually they agreed. Bill returned home without taking his picture, leaving the older Bill alone on the hillside. He sat and watched as a star beamed its light down on a little stable. On a far hill he could see the glow of angels and knew they were singing to shepherds. Then he looked down into that little town and he could see it. Mary and Joseph, and in a dirty old manger there was a baby. What was wrong with the focus of his Christmas photo? It was not focused on the baby. This entire time, Bill finally realized that he had been focusing on himself and his desires. On a hill one silent night down in a little town called Bethlehem, Bill finally realized where he should have had his focus all along. Bill, I bring you glad tidings of great joy. There was a voice like an angel behind him. For unto you is born today in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the King. Bill trembled as he turned to face the angel. I'm sorry for the problems I've caused. I've messed up. The angel was silent for a long while. It is a happy Christmas when people realize they are not perfect, but that Jesus is. In that house is the Christ child, and every person he meets will cause problems and will mess up. But focus on him. Turn to him. Trust in him. And Jesus forgives. I like the story of the Christmas photo. I mean, I like dressing up for Christmas, and we've got the nutcracker back there and the silly hats and all that stuff, and I have fun with all those things. And if I can't be silly, then I'm missing out on part of who I am. But every time I do that, every time I wear the funny jacket, I always do it for one reason, and that is to give me the opportunity to tell people about Jesus. I mean, that's what it's got to be all about. What is our focus on? What are you looking at this Christmas season? Are you focusing on Jesus? It's great to see you. We're going to keep this up, all right? Join us next week. All right, we'll have another video. If you missed last week's, I want to encourage you to go look at last week's. Last week is kind of a quasi-historical story about Julius Caesar and Caesar Augustus, who were at the same time the King of Kings being born, were declaring themselves gods in this own world. And it really is a story told through the eyes of Beelzebub, Satan himself, where he is contrasting his idea of who would be the ultimate anointed one on this planet in comparison to God's idea of his Messiah. So I want to encourage you to do that. Like and share. Let people know that you are watching this. Put it up on your YouTube page, your Facebook page. Share it with the people around you so that people will know and see what's going on. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers. So if you want to like and share that, that would be great. We will see you guys soon. All right. God bless you all. Bye.